Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to stitch little ribbon pouches to use as gift card holders or someplace to tuck some cash or a little note, just as a little treasure for someone else. These are fun to hide in the Christmas tree. And each one only takes you about 10 or 20 minutes to make. They're really fun and they're easy to make using Christmas ribbon, particularly the thick Christmas ribbon that's available almost everywhere during the Christmas season. So let's get started. Now this is just a simple little project here. We're going to make just these ribbon pouches. At the very least, you just fold the ribbon over and you have a little enclosed pouch, perfect for a gift card. This one doesn't have a formal closure. It's just the bent wire that's on the ribbon. This one has some buttons and you just wrap it like you do an old-fashioned envelope. The same thing, you can tuck your gift card or some cash or a little note right in. And here I just attached a little bit of ribbon just to decorate it. Now this one is my favorite. I used my widest ribbon and I embroidered just a cute little Christmas tree with a little button on top. Again, this has no formal closure. This is just something I tuck on the tree with a little name tag for somebody. And you can include your gifts inside that or just a little sweet note. So let's jump right into getting started. This is a fun way to use up those thick ribbon that you might use for your Christmas tree or wreaths. So now this thick ribbon doesn't have to be wired. Usually it is, just by the fact that it's so thick. They add the ribbon on the end to give it a little more body. That way you can control it. But any of these would work. I have this really thick 4-inch ribbon right down to the smaller size. You can even make a really teeny pouch if you wanted to make a miniature for a dollhouse or something. But the ribbons some are very inexpensive. The quality isn't as good as others, but you can find it and you usually have it in our stash, either from Christmas decorating or from sewing. So I'm just going to choose a ribbon today and I'm going to choose this plaid one. Again, this was an inexpensive ribbon that I found at one of the discount stores. So I'll set aside my other ribbon. I have a little fabric twine and that's going to make my closure because I'm going to show you how I make an actual closure for the ribbon pouch. A button for this closure, and then I have some embroidery floss or just some thread to stitch my pouch closed as well as add the button. So you want to decide the length of your little pouch. I always cut it a little larger than I need because it's easy enough to trim down. Now from there, I just kind of eyeball it. I'll bend the ribbon into the sides of the pouch, not worrying about the ends. I just want there to be overlap. So that's a good size for this little pouch. Again, it's based on the width of the ribbon. And if you really are partial to the ribbon and you want it to be wider, we'll just stitch the ribbons together. Remove the wire from the center and stitch them together to make it as wide as you want. So right here, I have a good basis for the center of my pouch. Now from here, I want to create the base. This is the part when you open the top, you have the base. I like that to be a little shorter. So I'll have it maybe come down to about here. And I'll fold that and tuck that under. So this is a rather small pouch. Again, you can line it up and make it perfect. It doesn't have to be, that's up to you. This is a little bit of a rustic project. But I like to have a nice seam up top. So again, I have my fold for my main pouch, and then I have my fold for the top here. I'm going to trim this down a little further because I don't want that bulk. And then I can stitch across here. But before I stitch across there, I want to just create the top fold as well. Now I like my top fold to come down over the bottom fold. So I'm just going to fold it just a little bit, just like that. And I'll neaten that up. So now, just to neaten it up, I'm going to stitch a line just across here to hold that top seam down, and I'll stitch the bottom down, and I'll just use a little bit of this embroidery floss. I like to come in here in between the folds so that I can just tuck my knot. And this project doesn't take very long at all, and I'll just stitch across both sides. I just make a little straight stitch or a little bit of a running stitch. You can make whatever stitch you want and make this as detailed as you like. So now I've stitched both the top and the bottom just to create that nice little seam. And before I stitch it closed, I want to add my button and my closure. So the first thing I want to do is add my little string that's going to be wrapped around the button as well as the entire pouch. So I've threaded it onto a very large needle, and this is a little touchy because it's going to create a big hole in my fabric. But I'm going to try and get it through there, just like that, and that's all I'm going to do to anchor it. If you're concerned, you can go through it and make a single stitch just like this, and then come back up again. And now it's fairly secure, but it does put a lot of wear on your ribbon. I'm going to leave my needle attached to this little twine that's going to be my closure because I want to add my button first. So I'm going to put my button down so that part of it covers where I just stitched this little twine. So I'm going to add my button here, and then to hide the knot, I'm going to come in from the top, and I'm going to use contrasting thread because it shows up nicely on the camera. I'll trim that end down just a little bit. Put my button in place and just stitch through it. I'm just trying to come up in the appropriate spot to add the button. So this is probably the most challenging part. Feed my button through. Make sure it's in the right spot. Fairly centered, and then stitch through again. And because this is going to be the part that really anchors the little pouch closed, I want to stitch through it a few times where it was and just keep stitching. Again, this pouch isn't going to get a lot of use, but I don't want it to pop open either. When I'm happy and fairly secure that that is fairly secure, I'll just make my knot on the back and then trim that down. Now before I start stitching, I'm just going to hold my pouch closed and then just wrap this thread around maybe twice and then loop it through. And it loops nice. Now if I don't want to loop it twice, I can just loop it once. I want to make sure I leave enough of this twine so that I can loop it around appropriately. Now for the ending of this loop, I like to just take a little wood bead or even a button and thread it through. As long as I have enough of this twine to wrap around the pouch as well as the button, I'm good. And I like to leave just an inch or two leeway. So that's a pretty good distance. From here, I'll just stitch through the button again. And maybe one more time. And it gets tighter and tighter each time you go. Now from here, I'll just knot around this thread here. Maybe just a couple times. Create a knot and then trim my thread. And so that's how I'm going to close the pouch. Now to really finish this project, so now you want to stitch down the sides, but just of the bottom of the pouch here. And I like to leave just maybe 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch open up top here, and that gives me a little leeway. You can also take just a little piece of cardboard, and cardboard, just because it's easy and accessible, I cut it down to size so it fits in the pouch and gives me a little depth. And it's thicker than any gift card or just folded bills that I'll use. And then I can take my thread again, go up in between the folds of the sides here, tuck my tail, and then just very carefully stitch around. Because this ribbon has a little blanket stitch on the end, I'll just stitch around there as well. And I'll stitch the length down, knot it off, and then stitch back up. I'm going to try and keep all my little stitches close to the edge, and that way not only will it close the piece, but it blends very nicely. and it allows me to stuff in the bills or whatever I want to put inside this little ribbon pouch. So therefore I can stuff my pouch with whatever goodies I have and then just wrap this around, and I have the little enclosed pouch that I can use just as a little gift. Now there are a few variations and they're all based on the ribbon that I chose to use. I went from really small to really large, and that's just the variety that you can make with your ribbon collection. So that's how I create my ribbon pouch with leftover Christmas ribbon. All right, sometimes I actually purchase the ribbon just because I like it, and this was a great way to use it up, so it's not always leftover. In the comments below, tell me how you use up your leftover Christmas ribbon. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.